Hi, and welcome to Common Denominator, straight up conversations with me, Moshe Popack. This week, managing student debt. Student loan payments have been paused since March of 2020. But starting May 1st, they're back. And now's the time to start planning. If you're one of the 43 million Americans affected or know someone who is, listen up. Personal finance expert Shani Curry joins us with strategies to help you get out from under your debt. Hi, Shani. Welcome to the show.
Good morning.
So, Shani, you have such an interesting journey that led you to become an expert in personal finance. Tell us a little bit about that journey.
Well, I went to school. I actually have a communications degree. I went to school to become a news reporter. And probably the thing that I'm most passionate about is probably well-being. Personal well-being plays a very, large impact on economics. Well-being, wealthy, all of those words are within the same wheelhouse. So in my study, I found that the healthier money decisions people make, the better they feel. And notice, I'm not saying the more money that people make, the better they feel. I'm saying that the better decisions that people make, the better that they feel. So that's how I really got the academic parts of my studies. And I spent a little bit of time in the bank, and I also spent a little bit of time selling luxury cars. At that point, I had enough understanding of credit scores, lending, borrowing money, insurance. So between those three wellhouses, over a decade, I've researched enough to be able to help people do the mind work so that they can do the money work.
And I think that's amazing. And my wife and I always talk about how there should be a course, even in high school, where they teach kids about practical management of their finances. Right? Mm-hmm. So you're on this journey 10 years, right? And I'm thinking like if we ingrain that same way, math, English, literature, whatever it happens to be, you have a course about your daily expenses. Yeah, they talk about it theoretical, but I thought that would be.
I know theoretically, I know that sounds I've been doing this for over a decade, and that's probably one of the common things that I hear people that's not particularly in the personal finance industry. Yeah. But if you really just think about the world largely, we live in the information age. There is no disparity of information. Like at this point, most of us are living by information overload. I myself have been hired to be a part of curriculums being built for money boot camps for children. I've been a part of teaching at colleges, high schools. So at this point, in the biggest class, and I always want to share this because when I work with my clients individually and personally, they also have this as a qualm. They say, "Oh my gosh, I miss all of these things," and so on and so forth. But the biggest money class that you've been a part of is the one that was subconsciously being taught by your family. That is the biggest money class. Either you were learning what not to do or you were learning what to do. So some of my money understanding and cash consciousness didn't just come from what I learned from the immersion in different financial instruments, but I look at just the foundation that my mother, my grandmother, my grandparents, that they provided, and constantly being fully aware of what they did well and what they did poorly. And that was your first money class. That is the one that had the most impactful ways of teaching you about what not to do and what to do. So that always be aware of that first class, because that is the biggest one.
Yeah, definitely. All education, we think the education comes in school, but really it's at home. It's always at home.
Yes.
Tell us about your company, Person Empowerment.
So Person Empowerment essentially is, I began it because obviously I'm a woman. And so when you think about a purse, oftentimes women will attach a lot of themselves to their purse, what they put in their purse, the status symbol that may be conveyed by the purse. And so I figured if I would take this very large totem that was associated with women and also associate financial wellness with it, then it would give a little bit of a a spin to this thing that we generally get attached to, and that's person empowerment.
So in other words, you're trying to, it seems, I know a big part of your goal is to help women. How did that?
I also have male clients. I have quite a bit of male clients. But when I began the company 10 years ago, I began it wanting to communicate mostly with women because I'm a woman. So I found that it was relatable. But the good thing is that in my decade of working with people and their money habits, the messaging really doesn't change based on the gender. That's what I'm finding.
I want to ask you about student loans and specific strategies our audience can use. But first, a reminder, this is Common Denominator. I'm Moshe Popack, and my guest today is personal financial expert Shani Curry. If you're enjoying this episode, please subscribe on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts, and we'd be grateful for any 5-star ratings. Plus, we'd love to hear from you. If you have feedback about the show, send us your comments on Twitter at @mpopack. Now, back to the show. So, Shani, on to student loans. In a few months, on May 1st, student loan repayments are about to kick back in. Federal government's saying that students are going to have to start paying, or former students are going to have to start paying their debts. 89%, I saw in a recent survey from the Student Debt Crisis Center, 89% don't even of people that owe student loans don't know, the process of going through that.
Yeah.
So is that what you find?
Mm-hmm. And because I work largely with my clients in terms of dealing with their student loans, I will say that the agency that governs student loans, in some ways, I really do wish that their process was a little bit easier. So we have, first of all, the first thing that you have to deal with when you're confronting your student loans is you have to get past the fact that it's a loan and not a grant, right? Because most people oftentimes feel like, it's like an American thing, like we shouldn't be paying for this. So a lot of people just have a lot of mental resistance towards student loans, especially if they're not using their degree, right? So they kind of just feel like somebody else should be paying this. This is really not, my responsibility. They kind of have that little bit of consciousness. And with that consciousness already being the foundation to dealing with your student loans, when you get on the phone to communicate with them, that process can sometimes be very agitating. So for those of you who are looking forward to beginning to start paying your student loans, I just want you to, number one, just go ahead and prime yourself to have a great deal of patience. A lot of the back lenders are not even really ready to start taking back all of the payments, right? Some of them don't even have the processing in place to receive the abundance of new payments that's going to start. So that would be the first thing that I would recommend is, number one, just in me dealing with it, being on the phone the whole time is long. Sometimes when you're on the actual website, it's not always the easiest to navigate. Do I think that they've made the website a little bit more functional? Yes, but in terms of when you're talking about the average person being $40,000 in debt, any bit of resistance that you can, that you're gonna find, the whole time is too much, I'm hanging up. There's a glitch on the web. Nobody really wants to pay back $40,000. Like you don't really want to do it. It's not, you're not like bouncing around. You know what I'm saying? It's not money coming to you, it's money that you have to pay out. So that would probably be one of the first lines of defense that I will offer is just go ahead and have your patience in place as you position yourself to pay.
So I know, right, we talked about there's about 43 million borrowers currently in the U.S. They're going to start having to pay. What would you say tips, ideas of how to deal with it kind of moving forward?
After you get your patients in position to deal with a debt that no matter how you feel about it, the second thing is that you would want to do, you want to create a budget, just a basic budget. When I'm working with my clients, some of them, depending on the way that their mind works, some of them I'll have them to go through their bank statements, and that's how we create their budget. And then some people are a little bit more tactical, and then we use a spreadsheet to create their budget. And then some people actually need to physically write down. They don't need a spreadsheet. They don't need something digital. They need something that they can touch and feel so that the money is real to them. I would let that be the first thing that you would do, just so that you can kind of see where that money has been going. You need a really good idea of your income. You need a really good idea of your expenses. And you need a really good idea of what is left over. Generally, a large portion of people kind of, it's just like if they were not paying it, they've just gotten kind of used to doing something else with the money. So as you do your budget, you may want to look for that $200, $300 and see where it is. Because the biggest thing about not paying your student loans is that when it comes to your credit, it can be very damaging when it comes to late payments. Late payments can drop your credit score anywhere from 15 to 25 points, depending on the debt. And that's every single time that you're late.
Let's tell the audience a little bit about why credit, because I think that's a very basic concept, which it took me a long time going out into the world. What does credit score do, and why is that important?
I mean, it just puts you in the position of how much you're going to borrow money. I mean, we think about it in a lot of different ways, but mostly that's what it comes down to. How much is it going to cost me to borrow money, right? And how many people do I need to ask? In the credit world, we would call that an inquiry, right? Because the more I inquire, that has an impact on how my score can drop. So really think about it in this simple way. If I need to borrow money to purchase a home, if I need to borrow money to purchase a car, if I need money to fund my business, am I going to be denied? And if it is a yes, how much interest am I going to have to pay in order to get access to someone else's money? And that essentially is what your credit score governs.
Right. So in other words, if you have a lower credit score, that means you're less qualified, and that means that your interest rate on that money might be higher, might be 7-8% instead of.
So you may be denied credit, and if you are offered credit, then it may be at a higher interest rate. If you look at the differences between someone who has a 7 and above credit score versus someone who has a 600, they're probably going to pay a difference about $200 a month, depending on the type of car that it is.
Are there different lenders? I always had the thought also that it's basically the federal government that lends student loans, but it's probably it's not just the federal government, but I'm sure there's other lenders.
Yeah,
as
you
well.
Also have some private lenders. Oftentimes when some of my clients come to me and they have a considerable amount of student loan debt and they have like a credit score of anywhere from 680 to 700, I will recommend them to refinance it. Especially if they already have a private lender. If most of their loans are with a government, then because like you don't want to lose out on some of the benefits that comes with your loans being under the government, then it's a little bit different. But depending on where you are, sometimes refinancing your student loans can really help out, especially right now in the economy that we're dealing with as relates to interest rates. So interest rates are a little bit lower. So depending on your credit score, refinancing your student loans through a private lender can sometimes work out for you if you're okay with losing some of the government benefits. I'll give you an example of that. So some people who had private student loans, most of their private student loans. So while the interest rate was frozen and you didn't have to make payments, that wasn't a guarantee with private loans. That is for government issue loans. So your private lender might have had some different stipulations. So if you decide to refinance your public loans, your government loans into private loans to a private student loan lender, you may lose some of those type of benefits. That's the only thing about it. But when it comes to payoff time and reducing the amount of interest that you pay, often refinancing your student loans can be helpful.
So in other words, you would go from, and the idea would be your just monthly payment would go lower. That would be the goal.
Based on your monthly payment can be lower, and your payoff time could also be lower as well.
Is there also possibility on some student loans for forgiveness?
Yes. Yes, the eligibility for forgiveness is definitely something that you want to look into depending on what sector of work that you're in, government, public service. You want to definitely look into student loan forgiveness, even if you have like a disability. Some of your employers may have some programming that they're extending to you that you can use to get in the student loan forgiveness program.
Where would be a good source for,
Student financial aid, studentfinancialaid.gov would be a really great place to go. It's a really great place to go. You just got to have your patience in line. If you are demotivated to pay your student loans, I just simply want you to log on and look at how much interest you pay on your student loans every single day, because the way that the interest is compounded, it's simple interest. So it's like sometimes I have my clients do it and they're paying like $80 a day on their student loans. It's ridiculous. It's really ridiculous. So when you look at the amount of interest that you pay on your student loans, it can be motivating. It can really be motivating, because when you think about paying $30 a day in interest, you definitely want to circumvent that money somewhere else.
I think also starting up, in other words, leading up, someone going out into the world, I would think that as parents of children not of college age yet, what are some tips to get them prepared, the kids prepared to get scholarships instead of debt, instead of loans?
That goes back to that home, aspect, right? So I have two children. I have 9 and 11-year-olds, and a part of their scholarship plan is to have high performance, right? That is a part of their scholarship idea outside of what I save on a monthly basis. So I'm here in Florida, so you have Florida prepaid, you have all type of different programs, college saving plans, whether you do it as an IRA. There's so many different ones that you can use to set money aside. But for me, it's twofold. One, high performance, right? So in the mindset where I think of my children, where I am conditioning them now, that I'm positioning them in terms of academics so that they can get scholarships. That's the first thing that you're thinking about now. Be on your children, focus on them so that they can have high performance that correlates with scholarships. Then you want to also look at your budget and figure out which college saving plan that would be best for you. A lot of my clients like a bit of a blended plan where they can do a bit of a college prepaid, and then they can do something that will allow their children to that will allow them to save for their children to go to school, even if they didn't go in Florida.
Wow.
So those are some basic things that you want to do.
I appreciate that. I know also you wrote a book, 10 Things Every Woman Should Keep in Her Purse. What are a few key takeaways from the book?
One of them that's coming to the top of my head is an eraser. I think one of the things that you should have, whether you have a purse, a financial wallet, I think that you know that you're going to make some level of financial mistakes. You're going to have these bit of things that you're just not going to do well. And I think if you consciously know that, you know what, I can't go backwards, but I can move forward. And how can I move forward with more education so that I don't keep duplicating the same type of money mistake? So an eraser comes right off the top. For women, a strand of gray hair is something that you put in your purse, because it doesn't matter how many colonics you get, how many detox you get, how many times you go to the gym. One thing about it, you're going to age, right? And when you age, there's going to be two things that's going to be looking right at you. And it's going to be inflation. It is going to be taxes. And the only way that you can counter some of that is through investing. So the strand of gray hair is just to put that in the back of your mind so that you're not steadily just thinking of yourself as YOLO, young and, live for today. So the gray hair kind of reminds you, I'm going to age.
Really, really awesome. And how could people find out more about you?
I'm everywhere on Purse Empowerment. Any social media that you look at, my website is Purse Empowerment. I do offer a free 15-minute consultation. So if you're trying to put together a very simple finding a very simple student loan plan, specifically if you feel anxiety and you feel just overwhelmed, like, gosh, I haven't been paying this. A lot of people just really don't feel like paying it. Like sometimes I look at my clients, I look at their income, I look at their expenses, and sometimes they have like $8,000 left over, they still don't want to pay their student loans because there's a mind, you know what I'm saying? There's this thing in their mind, like, it's not mine, I don't have to pay it, because they're not attaching it to interest rates. They're not attaching it to their other goals, right? So when you start to think like, okay, by me not paying this, what is it stopping me from doing? What is it stopping? Is it keeping my credit score at a specific space? Is it causing me to pay more interest in something else? So bite the bullet. So I do offer a free 15-minute session that you can grab on my website. That's at personempowerment.com.
Well, thank you so much, Shani. It's really been a pleasure and really enlightening. So I appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Thanks for listening to the Common Denominator podcast. Join us next week for another inspiring, impactful, and empowering conversation. To learn more about Moshe, head to MoshePopack.com. If you enjoyed this episode, feel free to share it. And we'd be grateful if you could rate, review, and subscribe to the show.